Hey, everybody. Hi. So I'm used to being a facilitator and not like a speaker of information. So if you ever want to shout anything out while I'm up here, I would really appreciate that. Hey, first of all, big shout out to Question Pro, the Question Pro team for putting this on today. You know, I think that yes, please. I think that any time that we get away from our day-to-day and we come to something like this, we want it to be a good use of our time. And I think that you guys knocked it out of the park. So much really great information that we're getting from the start about delight, about employee experience, customer experience, our insights. I mean, so much to take away. And so I'm here, I'm the last part of the day. I am between you and the open bar. So I hope to make it entertaining for you. I'm gonna ask you guys to just be here with me for this next part of it. So if you have a screen open in front of you, just put it down, flip it over. Let's do this together. We're all here together for the end of this. So thank you so much for your time and attention today. So we focused on everyone else, what we're giving to our customers, to our employees, to the people around us. And now I'm going to ask you to focus a little bit on you. I'd like to lay a little bit of groundwork before we start here. The first is that I'm not a PowerPoint guru. So we're just going to put that out there. So just bear with me on these slides. I did put them together. It wasn't a child. But hopefully the message comes across with you there. The second is that you're probably not going to learn anything new from me today. That's a good way to start a speech, right? Are you guys all hooked now? Hanging on every word? What I am going to share with you is the result of my own personal research over the last 2 decades or so, my lived experience, my experiments, my failures, my self-revelations, the doing the work that I've done for the last 2 decades. And if you can take like one little nugget from what I tell you today, then I'll feel like I've done my job. The third is that I love people. So this is my high school superlative, so it's been obvious for a long time that I love people. No, that's not an actual kidney. No, I have not had the opportunity to actually do this yet, but I always have, and always will love people. I believe that people are inherently good, that we're looking out for each other. I think that it's amazing that like some year ago, 2 cells bumped together and now here you are. That's pretty cool, right? And I believe that we're all experiencing this life in different ways. My purpose is to help people reach their full potential. The last thing is that we all experience crisis differently. Something that might seem catastrophic to me might be no big deal to you. So we're going to talk about crisis and what that means. And I'm hoping that through the work that I have done, I have created some tools for myself that help me navigate crisis a little bit better, because you know what? Crisis is a constant. So we're going to experience this every day. So I'd like you all, that slide's intentionally blank, don't worry. I'd like you all to stand up. Yes, she's doing it. I know. I'm sorry. Everyone stand up. I know. Shake it out. Warm it up. Here we go. All right. Now, thank you. Wow, if you're able, I should have said, but look at you. You guys look great. All right, so stay standing if you feel that you have experienced a crisis in your life. Look around the room. Yeah, nobody sat down. Okay. Continue to stay standing if you feel that you have experienced a crisis in the last month. Okay, couple people sat. Okay, all right. Okay. All right, yeah, the rest of you can sit down. Again, you can sit, yeah, you can all sit. Yes, thank you, yeah, good. Well done, good. So right, crisis, real or perceived. Catastrophic to me, not a big deal to you. There are some crises that I think we can all agree that we've lived through together. Does this ring a bell, right? So I will take a moment to soak that in, okay? I will talk about what this started with me, and I'm talking about COVID here. So I'm going to share actually a series of text messages that my husband and I exchanged on March 12th, 2020. Does anybody remember that day? It was the day before, at least in my experience, Friday the 13th, when everything kind of shut down here. So this is my dear husband, Chad. I have redacted a few things that were just not relevant to this conversation. So my sweet husband, Chad, is like, hey, Meg, you know, things are going to start to happen. I think things are going to start to shut down. I think, I'm worried about keeping the kids safe. Bob at work has a serious flu. I think you should run to Costco. And I'm like, yeah, cool, okay, let's go. So I ran to Costco. I think all Costco's are basically the same, but if you can picture where the checkout is and where like the produce and all that stuff is, this is the checkout line that I'm in. You might notice the first thing I say there, they're out of toilet paper, right? So I'm sorry, this is bringing back some memories. Crystal, when she was prepping me for this, she's like, leave everyone feeling joyous. How am I doing so far? Right, let's get back to this. So, and I was like, hey, yeah, they're out of toilet paper, they're out of Clorox wipes. This is my favorite part of it. Same day. Get a message from the school. Oh, school is canceled starting Monday. They're trying remote learning. And my husband at the bottom, you see that? What the F is that? Right? So to look back on this like 2 years later, reflecting on this, different world. But would you agree that that was kind of a shared crisis that we've lived through together? Okay, I'm going to share some more of my personal communication with you guys today. Here we are, 2 years later. This is in June of this year. This is probably hard to read, but this was an email that I sent to my team after the Roe v. Wade decision was handed down. Now, this is not that speech. I don't have any opinions about that here today, but I did send a note to my team on Thursday, June 30th, just talking about that we're here for them if they needed to talk about anything. And then on Tuesday, July 5th, just 5 days later, our head of people and culture sent a note to our entire team talking about the mass shootings in Highland Park, Illinois, which is a suburb of Chicago, which is where my team is based. So in 5 days, we had to send what I feel like are two fairly historic messages dealing with some pretty critical things here. So maybe COVID was catastrophic to you. Maybe Roe v. Wade, maybe mass shootings, maybe. These are the last 2.5 years of crises that we've been living through. It's a lot. So just take this in for a minute. I just want you to sit with this for a minute. I'll get you through it, I promise. Do you feel like it's been like one historic event after another? And these are our shared crises. These are things that we've been living through together. But guess what? We each have our own individual personal crises that didn't even make that list that we've been living through. I'm going to share with you two major crises in my own life that caused me over the last 2 decades to really do that work, to really figure out what are those individual personal coping mechanisms, tools that I need to get myself from fight or flight into rest or digest. And we'll talk about how to do that in a minute here. Here's the first one. This is Dad and I in Rehoboth Beach, Delaware. I was about 6 years old. And when I was 26 years old, I was at work and I received a phone call from my big brother letting me know that my dad had died that morning. He was 67 and he was tinkering with his old car, changing the oil. He had it up on a jack. The jack gave way and crushed him, killing him instantly. Shocking. So I went into a state of grief and depression. And because I didn't have the coping mechanisms when I was 26, because I hadn't done that work, my body started reacting physically to this, and I developed optic neuritis. And what that is an inflammation of the optic nerve. And so this started with a terrible migraine right after my dad's funeral. I was like, well, yeah, I have grief, I'm stressed out, and then a couple days later, I completely lost the vision in my right eye, which sent me to the emergency room. I eventually gained that vision back, but what that did was send me into a series of tests about what was going on with my body, because optic neuritis is generally the precursor for multiple sclerosis. So I spent much of my late 20s and early 30s undergoing test after test after test, waiting for that other shoe to drop. I did develop optic neuritis in my left eye, so I did lose the vision in my left eye. Bilateral optic neuritis without multiple sclerosis is pretty much unheard of. And yet, here I am, nearly 20 years later, without that diagnosis. Here's my second major crisis. Yes, that's my minivan. In 2012, so a decade ago, I moved from the city of Chicago. I am a city girl through and through to the suburbs. Yes, suburbs, somebody said it, yes. I moved to the suburbs, and I was all in. I got the minivan. The Christmas tree is for size there, right? Yeah. We went all in, so this was in 2012. So yeah, okay, so I'm out of the city, I'm with my family, but also during that year, I decided to quit the job I'd been at for nearly 8 years that I loved, I really enjoyed, I enjoyed the people I was working with, But I was chasing a title. That's, again, a whole other speech. We won't get into that. Took the new job, so excited, 3 weeks in, I'm like, I've made a terrible mistake. I called my old boss, I'm like, can I have my job back? Too late. This new job was not a good fit for me. I was working 90 hours a week, I had a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old. I was basically miserable. So guess what? I quit that job in 2012, and I started my own company, my first startup. So all of that happened during that year, and I was not handling it well. So I had not done the work to really figure out how to come up with these mechanisms, these tools that I needed to go through that. After my dad's death, I paid a lot of attention to my body because of everything that was happening to it. So that's when I really started to get my diet in shape and going to the gym and working out, but I still wasn't taking care of what was going on up here. This sent me into a major depression. I was self-soothing through alcohol, through going out too late, ignoring my family, scrolling endlessly on social media, binging the Netflix, doing anything to distract myself from what was actually going on. And that's normal, right? Our internal systems are ancient. Our sympathetic system, our parasympathetic system, our nervous system, the way that we soothe ourselves has not evolved in over 50,000 years. So it has nothing to do with willpower when you are doing these things. It has everything to do with how you're made up internally. And everyone in this room is made up internally basically in the same way. But we go to these things under stress, under duress, in crisis, as a way to try to help us solve these problems. So what should you do instead? Get a tattoo. Hopefully Traeger, right? A Traeger tattoo? This is my friend Sheetal. So what I ended up doing when I was suffering from that depression and I needed a way out and I knew I wasn't being the person I wanted to be for myself, for my family, for the people I worked with, for everyone around me, I needed to do something. And I knew that I needed to do something both for my body and for my mind. And what I did for me was I found yoga. And that was connecting all of the dots for me. And the first class that I went into started talking about focusing on your breath. And it changed my life. So this is my friend Sheetal. She did the teacher training with me last year. We got very close, and there's 5 of us that did this together, and it's just such a cool group of individuals. And that is the ancient Sanskrit symbol for breathe. And so we have all decided to tattoo it on our body. I don't have mine yet, but that was Sheetal getting hers last week, actually. And by the way, be careful what you text me because it might end up in a public presentation. Apparently, I like to share all my communication. So it's this idea of finding your breath. So I'm going to lead you through a couple exercises right now because what you need to do to find clarity in moments of crisis is to first clear your mind. So we're going to do that through our breath. So if you could, humor me. You guys have been so great so far. Sit up in your chair. Please place both of your feet flat on the floor. Scoot your bottom back to the back of the chair. Kind of sit down, feel it beneath you. Rest your hands comfortably in your lap. And close your eyes. Yes, all of you. I promise no one is looking at you. Oh, good. Oh, you guys are great. Okay. Now, start with a deep breath in through your nose and sigh it out. I like to think of it as an exasperated teenager. That's okay. Do that again. Nice deep breath in and deep breath out. Now start to count your inhale. So try to get to maybe a count of 4 or 5 or 6. And on your way out, just add 2 more to the end of that. So if you breathe in for 4, breathe out for 6. If you breathe in for 5, breathe out for 7. And what we're doing here is we are stimulating our vagus nerve, which controls our parasympathetic nervous system, which sends signals to calm down. This is one way of breathing. The other is called box breathing, which again was started in yoga, but was made popular by the Navy SEALs. And the idea of box breathing is to breathe in for 4. You guys could try this now if you want. Hold it for 4. Breathe out for 4. And hold it for 4. Good. When you're ready, you can slowly blink open your eyes. Thanks for humoring me. How do you feel? Slightly calmer? A little embarrassed? Anyone asleep? So this is, guys, don't worry, I was a psych major 20 years ago, so I'm totally able to talk about these things. This is part of my personal research that I've done. And so these ancient systems that we have in our body, you guys are probably aware with the sympathetic. That's the fight or flight. And no, it's not just for when you're in the woods being chased by a bear. It is for when you perceive your ancient 50,000-year-old caveman system as like, oh, something is coming to attack me. These things happen in your body. So even if it's just like Joe said something crappy to you on that last call, all of a sudden this stuff is happening to you. Your heart's beating fast. Your breath is shallow. You get an upset stomach, right? Like you sometimes, oh, that made me sick to my stomach. That's your sympathetic nervous system jumping in, perceiving some sort of threat. This is what happens when we have a crisis. Now remember, we all perceive crisis differently. So just because I'm seeing something as catastrophic and my body is doing this, yours might not be doing that in the same situation. But to get us to the rest and digest, the way that we can actually have a clear thought in a crisis situation, even when you're on fire, I keep going back to Jason's speech, but right? When you kind of calm yourself down is finding that breath, because that stimulates the vagal nerve and that tells that parasympathetic system to jump in. This is science. So you can do that even if you're on the call, even if Joe said that crappy thing on the call. Now maybe you can't close your eyes, maybe you can turn off your camera for a second, maybe. Or even if you can't do that, just take that deep breath. They probably won't even notice it on the Zoom, right? Just, yeah, okay, Joe, yeah. Get that in there. So I've come up with, again, kind of a tool that I want you to think about. So the breath is the first thing. But once you have your breath in check and your mind is clear, you can start to equip yourself with how you're going to handle this crisis situation. The first is to examine what's actually happening. So when we get into fight or flight and we feel like something's a crisis, sometimes our emotions run high. And if you are able to calm yourself down, if you're able to see clearly, you can remove emotion from the situation and you can handle it with logic. I also want to encourage you to question what's actually going on. So once you can actually logically look at the situation with a clear mind, think about what stories you're telling yourself. We have thousands of thoughts that run through our head every single day, and a lot of them are a negative talk track that goes on and over again, telling us stuff about ourselves that probably isn't true. So think about that. Think about where your thoughts are going in this situation, and if it really is a crisis, and how you can handle it, how you can best equip yourself with these tools to calm yourself down in the moment. Those two add up to understanding what's going on, and that allows you then to be able to come to the people that are counting on you, your customers, your employees, right? The people in your world that are counting on you to have the right answer in the situation. If you understand what's fully going on, being intentional about everything. So coming up with the right answer with intent. We talk about this a lot at my company. As I was saying when I kicked this off today, right? Thinking about why we're here. I know that it was planned with a lot of intent. Everything was planned perfectly because you're here, you're taking time away from your family, you're taking time, you had to travel in, some people had to travel overnight, right? So everything should be done with intent, especially when you're in a crisis situation, especially when you're in a situation where emotions might be running high. Think about how what you're doing impacts everyone around you, because as I mentioned before, we all had these shared crises that we were living through, but then everyone has their own individual ones that they're dealing with on a daily basis. We saw that when we were standing up here. The last is a P, prioritize. I would also say practice. We could have two Ps here. So thinking about, right, I talked about physically, how you need to work on that and take care of your physical well-being, you know, and if you want to have muscles, you need to go to the gym regularly. If you want to be limber, you need to stretch regularly. If you want to have those resources to calm yourself down, you need to practice that regularly. You need to practice this breathing regularly in crisis situations and even not in crisis situations. So I'm at a point, I've been practicing yoga for almost 10 years, and I'm at a point, for example, coming up to talk to you today, where if I just take one deep breath, it automatically calms my system. Like I automatically have that moment of peace and calm, but it's something that I practice every day and have for almost 10 years. So keep that in mind. You want to practice, and then you also want to prioritize what you need in a crisis situation, because you need to take care of yourself in order to take care of everyone else around you. So what do you need to do first instead of just reacting? because crisis often causes us to just immediately react and jump in. But can you take that moment, that pause, to really reflect on what needs to happen? I'm just going to leave you with a final quote. We are in Austin, so I used a quote from John Mackey from his book, Conscious Capitalism. But crisis is often met with fear, uncertainty. But what I really love what he's saying here is that it's actually a tremendous opportunity to learn about yourself, right? We have two choices in a crisis situation: our thoughts and how we control those, and then our behavior and how we react to it. So I encourage you, hopefully you can take away something that I shared with you today, to wrap up this amazing conference and think about just taking care of yourself and how that will feed into everything else that you learned about today and every situation that you're dealing with. Because crisis is certain, but you are in control of the way that you react to it. Thank you all for your time.